Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Wholehearted Leadership Podcast. And today I'm extremely excited. I'm talking to a very, very inspiring young person. When I met him, I was completely blown away by his level of confidence, his vision for life, as well as his connectedness with his dream. Welcome, Kelvin Kuok, to the Wholehearted Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. You have no idea how excited I am for this podcast today. So thank you so much for having me today.
Wow, Kelvin. So, normally we start our podcast with a few quick questions. So the first question, right, is what does wholehearted leadership mean to you?
I think there's a lot to unpack from these two very simple words. But I think wholehearted, from the word itself means that your heart is whole, your heart is full. And when it comes to leadership, right, there's a very fun thing because I like to teach leadership to kids. And let me just ask this to you. What's the only word you can form from the word lead, L-E-A-D?
Deal.
Yes. So when it comes to leadership, there's only two things you need to deal with. You need to deal with people around you and people and yourself.
Wow.
So this is leadership. And when it comes to wholehearted leadership, means that you treat these two groups of people with your heart full. So I think it's a very beautiful word because sometimes when your heart is not full, it affects the way you treat other people. It affects your ability to love. So that's why, one of my favorite saying is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So a lot of times when we try to lead other people, we try to lead a project, we try to influence people around us. And if the inner work is not done, it's not complete, it's very hard for us to do so. So I think wholehearted leadership simply means that, leadership starts from within. It starts from yourself. Once you are done with that inner work, once you are very comfortable with your own skin, you can do so many amazing things, including influencing positively the people around you.
Wow, in one short answer, right, you have really just summarized everything wholehearted leadership is. It's like, okay, we shall end the podcast right now.
I still have time.
Yeah, of course. There's so much here to unpack, as you said, right? So, but you brought a very interesting word, right? The word deal, right? When you sign a deal or when you, buy a deal online or buy something, right? What it connotes is there's a form of exchange. Right? If you purchase, let's say, a travel package, you're parting with money and you're exchanging for a bunch of services, experiences, or probably even products, right? When you go travel. So that's a deal, right? So what's the exchange between a leader and the followers?
Exchange between leaders and followers. Interesting question. I think for followers, they expect direction. Because sometimes, in a setting where you require a leader, that guy must be visionary. He must be able to structure things nicely and provide clarity. That's what I think is very important for a leader to do. He must lead with clarity so that his followers knows what to do, right? At the same time, I think what a leader expects is really, I think, not just obedience, but also camaraderie. That to me is very important because a great leader would never be like a top-down kind of like a instruction. It's like instead of you working for me, you work with me. So I think that is really what a true leader expects, for the entire team to work together with him and to win battles with him. Because if it's just, a top-down instruction, it can only get you so far. Maybe you can get one project done or two projects done. But when it comes to long term, when it comes to the battle ahead, you need a bunch of people who go to war with you. So I think that's what a leader expects and what a leader should really, aim to achieve as well, is to really build up this camaraderie with the team. And as for followers, of course, when you expect clarity, expect instructions, don't be afraid to raise up your own opinions as well. Because leadership comes from within and everyone can lead in certain times. So I think the last point would be, I think a leader should also encourage his followers to lead, right? Even the smallest aspects of things, give them some control over it, let them see how they will perform. And it should be a beautiful dance between this leadership and leaders and followers. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's the leader, who's the follower. Everyone's just one big team. And I think together, a strong team wins battle together.
I really love that. I think the word that came to me as you're describing is the word alignment, not obedience, right? So obedience is kind of the source of power, the central source of power comes from only the leader, and the rest of the people are just blindly following, right? Obeying. But when we're talking about alignment, we're talking about all the forces of the entire group being aligned and directed in the same direction. it actually creates a lot of synergy. It actually creates a lot of leverage and a lot more, multiplier effect. One of the books I love, one of the books that changed my perspective of leadership is Multipliers by Liz Wiseman. And this, in a book, right, she said that the best leaders are multipliers. They multiply the forces, they multiply the intelligence of the collective. And the other leaders are what we call diminishers, right? So it's like their presence suck the air out of the room, right? Their presence make other people just become smaller. So they actually diminishers. They diminish the collective energy of the room. They make people feel smaller of themselves in their presence. So I really thought that was what you just said is so powerful, right? It's like, how do you actually galvanize people around a vision? So you talk about the word vision, right? It's like, and it's something that I personally struggle with as well, right? As a leader, as an aspiring and ambitious leader of wanting to make a bigger impact in my own life, sometimes I sometimes get caught in the woods. I sometimes get caught in the wilderness. What happens when the leader's vision sometimes get blurred or they feel that they are lost? How can the leaders find their way back?
I think the first thing that you can do is to acknowledge what you're feeling. Because for a lot of leaders, they feel that it's a shame for us to be lost, right? Especially when you're put in a position to lead. But I think the greatest strength comes from acknowledging your flaws, comes from acknowledging that you're human. So sometimes, just acknowledge that it's okay to feel lost. And that as a leader, you don't have to have the burdens of the world on your shoulders entirely. That's why you have a team, right? I think it's always nice to be able to share your worries with your team and people you trust. And that inner circle that you have, it's very important as well. And from those conversations, from those people, you will slowly gain clarity because sometimes they see things that you cannot see.
Yep.
So I think that is very important. It's okay to be lost. A lot of people think that I have everything figured out at 21. I like to tell them, definitely not lah. I mean, there's so many things I don't know, so many things I have to learn. And the one thing I always, do is just to keep an open mind, an open heart to learn. Right? Because when you are very stubborn and we are fixated on like one thing, you lose sight of the things around you. So I think when you're lost, just take a step back. And really, it's like why I took a leave of absence from university. Even though it's my 3rd month in, I took a year off. The school have to call me and say, what are you doing? Right? But I took a gap year not because, I don't know what to do. It was because I realized I needed space to formulate my thoughts and really align myself. So one of the quotes I like, and I think it's very relevant to this, it's, not all who wander are lost. Right?
Wow.
Sometimes they are just figuring things out and having things fall into place.
Wow. And so when you wander, you're not lost. And it allows you to wonder what will happen next.
Yes.
So it turns the wonder to wonder. Right?
Beautiful.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I think sometimes we lose the sense of wonder as well. I think it was Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, who is a French philosopher, who said something like, if you want to motivate your people to build the boat, don't organize them to chop wood and assemble the boats. Inspire them to crave the open seas.
Wow.
And then they will do what's necessary to assemble the boat and then to sail the boat. So that's so beautiful what you shared.
Yeah.
I mean, your quote just inspired this quote for me. It's like that. I just remember that, and it was so powerful as well. So besides vision, right, what other obstacles are there for leaders leading wholeheartedly?
I think like what I mentioned at the start, like leading comes from the heart. It comes from like this inner work that you have done for yourself. So I think a lot of leaders, when they lead, sometimes they are not comfortable entirely with themselves yet. So there are a lot of things that are holding them back from leading 100%. So like what I said, right, you can't pour from an empty cup. And sometimes the best leaders I know, they suffer silently. And on the front, they may look like someone who is very like charismatic. They lead with confidence. Whatever they say, people will follow. But when everything is done, when they pack up the things and when they go home, they're struggling with a lot of things internally. So I think as leaders, sometimes they don't see that this is something they need to work on. And because of their day-to-day job, they're very good at influencing. They're very good at putting up a front. And sometimes over time, right, it becomes your identity. You lost track of the things that you have to work on yourself. And it will come and bite you like 10 or 20 years down the road because those are not properly healed. That's why I think as leaders, you must first be comfortable with your journey, be it something that you've been through in the past. Just like myself, I have to do a lot of inner work in order to lead today, right? I have to be comfortable with my past, the things that happened to me. And when all of that is done, my cup is filled, and now my love for myself, it overflows my cup to other people.
I can feel it. Yeah.
So that to me is really leadership. When you are really like contented with yourself, you're happy with yourself, then this love can go on to influence the people around you. That to me is wholehearted leadership.
Ooh, so beautiful. I mean, it's remarkable, right? I mean, I know it's going to sound very cliche. People always say, wow, you are such a wise person, you are such a mature person for someone so young. And I think sometimes we just need to lose the adjective young. It's like a person is young or old in biological age doesn't really determine their level of wisdom, right? It's like there are people who may still live life on autopilot, rinse and repeat, without actually doing the inner work, as you say, right? So they could reach a bit of a ripe old age, right? A middle age, right? Ripe old age, but they still haven't actually advanced in their wisdom, in their way of thinking, in their thought processes. But it's very remarkable for someone at 21 to be talking about healing. Wow. I talk a lot about healing as well, and it's an inner work that I think that leaders need to do, because what's our earliest experience of leadership? From our parents, right? When we are children, we are kids, we look to our parents for leadership. And if you have great parents and you have great upbringing, kudos to you, well done to you, you're lucky, right? But we don't always have that, and I'm not using this as a excuse to blame parents, right? It's like they did the best they could with what they knew, with what they had. But sometimes, obviously, we cannot always count on our parents, right, to give us the kind of leadership that we want. And how our parents treat us, how our parents treat other people, especially how they treat people who are lower status outside of our home, how your parents treat each other, right? So they become role models, and those are the things that we take our cues from a very young age. And then when we go to school, right, when we join CCAs, we have like student leaders, we have people, seniors that we look up to. They also become our, bona fide leaders. And then when we go out into the workforce, right, and we also have leaders. And so when we experience leadership or a lack of leadership or bad leadership, what happens is that we don't really have that exposure to what great leadership looks like. And then when we are given the opportunity, and very often at a workplace, we are promoted because of our ability to do our job well. But that doesn't translate to the ability to lead other people well. And so therefore we end up taking some of this old programming and unconsciously bringing that into our own leadership, and that also gets in the way. So I think I always, for a long time, say that, healing is so important for leaders. But it's refreshing to hear someone like you talking about healing as well.
It is super important. And I think a lot of people my age won't talk about this like healing thing. I mean, you've only gone through like this small portions of life, right? Why is there to heal? But I think for myself, because of my own personal journey, even though I'm 21, I've been through a lot. And I've seen a lot of things, like the good and bad side of humanity. So I think the best thing that I did for myself was to acknowledge that I needed healing. I needed to work on myself before I can go around influencing other people. Because if, my cup is not filled, even like the things I say to other people, they may not be, the original intention they wanted to put forth, right? So I think once that is done, the inner work is done, you have so much more ability to really like influence the world around you positively. And yeah, so I think that is very important. No matter what age you are, you're never too young or too old to start healing.
Oh, so beautiful. And that segues very nicely into talking about some of your earlier experiences. I think when we met up for coffee, you shared a lot, and that really inspired me a lot. Those are great stories. So there's quite a lot to unpack over here. So maybe we'll start with your childhood, right? It's like, where did you grow up, and how did you land up here in Singapore?
So I was born in this small town Malaysia called Sibu, Sarawak, and afterwards I moved to Johor Bahru because my father was working in Singapore. So for the majority of my early years, I was actually spending my time in Malaysia, and I think that's something that not a lot of people know about me. I only came to Singapore at the tender age of 9. And when I first came in, I couldn't speak a complete sentence of English without having, Chinese words in it. And like what we discussed, when the first time we met, I was pretty much like a third culture kid. I was too Malaysian to be a Singaporean. I was too Singaporean to be Malaysian. So I was like everywhere at nowhere, but nowhere at the same time. So that created like an identity that I couldn't really clench onto. Like I was just floating around. And because of my inability to really express myself, there was a lot of challenges growing up, especially like having friends or, even my teachers looked down on me when I first came to Singapore. And on top of that, every day was a struggle because we have to wake up at 4 a.m. every day, like take the bus, cross the customs, and if you're lucky, reach school on time at 7. So that was the type of, life that we have to go through, for 7 long years, from 9 years old all the way until 16, until I had to, we have to find a place here for us to study during junior college to prepare for A-levels. So that was kind of the struggles and the obstacles that we have to go through. I wouldn't say it's something that is like super, super difficult, but it was something most people my age won't get the chance to experience, right? So one significant event, I think, when I was 9 was that because I really wanted to improve my English. I was sick of people, like laughing at me and, pointing out my accent is very strong. So I requested my father to send me to English tuition. So he did. And we paid a lot of money for it. And like I said, because sometimes I have to travel, right? So sometimes I'm late. And I think there was one time when I went to her class, and the teacher just looked at me and said, this is the watered down version lah. Say, you'll never be successful in your life, right? And at that point in time, I was so confused. Like, as an educator, aren't you supposed to bring out the best in your students? Instead of like dimming their light, you should be pouring gasoline on it. It should be like making them feel passionate about life. So, but that night, it was really a very challenging night for me because it's like the last straw that broke the camel's back, right? And I was just questioning everything around me, like why me? I've always tried to be a good person. So to me, it's a lot of anger, it's a lot of confusion. I don't know why this type of stuff, is happening around me. But at that night, I gave myself 2 options. It's either I do something about it, or I continue living a life like this. And thankfully, I picked the correct option. So from that night onwards, I had a 180-degree change, right? And the first thing I did for myself was to learn how to speak, was to learn English. And I have this blue notebook that I carry around everywhere I go. And every word that I come across from conversations, from books that I didn't understand, I'll write them in my blue notebook. So over the years, the size of this book grew, and so did my confidence and my ability to speak. And 3 years later, when I take my PSLE, I taught my class for it.
Oh.
And they needed someone to do a valedictorian speech. And I think I shared with you, at 12 years old, public speaking is equivalent to a death sentence. So no one was going to do it. But I was just thinking to myself, hey, I wanted to close this chapter. And I wasn't going to live without a bang. I didn't want to live silently like how I always been. So amongst a crowd of 21 hand rose, and it was mine. I said, I'll do it. So I went up and gave a 2-minute speech. And, my heart rate didn't even increase. I was ready for it. I wanted that moment, to share my story, to tell the world that, hey, I've done it against all odds.
Yes.
So, when I finished, the crowd erupted in applause. 400 over people, and everything just became a blur. I remember I stood there and I thought to myself, this is nice. But they were celebrating me because of my achievements, because of my courage to stand in front of a crowd, but they didn't know my story. So on that day onwards, right, a seed was planted in me that one day, if I ever have the privilege of becoming an educator, I want to be the best type of educator the world has ever seen. Those who ignite fires instead of dimming the light of others. And 10 years later, I fulfilled that promise by starting Young Leaders Collective.
Wow. So much to unpack over here. Let's just rewind a little bit back, right? It's like you said it was a watered down version. That what exactly did she say to you? Let's not water it down. Let's just give it. Okay. This is a family-friendly program, okay? But I hope she didn't say anything nasty. That bad. But tell us what exactly did she say to you?
It was pretty nasty, a little bit. Okay, but this is the entire version lah. Because I was Malaysian, right? So she pretty much just said that all you Malaysians only come to Singapore and. You want to hear the exact words?
Yeah, say it.
All you Malaysians only know how to come to Singapore and suck. You'll never be successful in your life, Kelvin. Yeah, that's the exact words that she told me. And I was 9 years old, and she was a lady in her 70s, and that's why I was really confused because at 9 years old those words really hurt. And I looked up to her because she was the first person who actually, gave me a glimpse of how a good speaker would be like. right? Someone who's good at English. And that kind of like just, like it was last straw that broke the camel's back. And I went home that night, I cried, and it was a very tough time. But yeah, that was the words that she said. I still remember it today, not because that I've not walked past it. It's because, I want to share this story with other people to remind them that words matter.
Yes.
No matter how, even at the instant, at that very moment, when the words slip out from your mouth, even if you don't mean it. You see, after 10 years, I still remember it. It was carved in my heart. So that's why words are very important. Like the things you say to the people around you, be mindful about them.
Yeah. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can break my spirit, and that's so they are eternal. Sometimes we never know the kind of words we say to people may become the words that they repeat to themselves, right, over and over and over again. They're still haunted by it, for years to come, and they haven't done the necessary healing. But I mean, something interesting, right? It's like on the day you got your papers back, you topped your school for English. That's remarkable.
Thank you.
And you took the examination results, and you were going to go to the school, the tuition center, and then throw it in the face of the teacher.
That was what I had in mind.
Yeah, you said that, right? I mean, I think you shared that. So can you tell me a little bit more about exactly like what went down there?
For the longest time, the reason for me to study so hard to get a good result was actually to prove people wrong. It wasn't because, I really wanted to achieve it out of my own accord. So when I achieved it, there was still a lot of anger inside my heart, especially with that particular teacher. So I told myself, hey, I'm going to top this English examination. I'm going to go from an F to an A. I'm going to find her. I'm going to shove my certificate on her face. Say, hey, I did it. You're wrong. Right? So I didn't tell my parents this. So I took my certificate and I traveled to the tuition center. It was my last day there. And between me and the tuition center, there was this escalator. It was a very, very short ride. It was only like 5 meters in height. And it's side by side. So you can go up and come down. It's just one escalator there. So I was ready, right? I had my cert in my hand, and I took the escalator up, and I was ready to find that teacher. I said, wow, bloody hell, you better wait for me.
Jang.
So I took the certificate and I took the escalator up. But it only takes like 15 seconds or less than that to reach to the level where the tuition center is. But as I was traveling up the escalator, I had 15 profound seconds of inner reflection. And somehow, as I made my way up, I decided to forgive her. I decided to, not hold any grudges against her. So it was a very, very funny thing because I literally just went up and I came down.
Aww.
Right? So I didn't go into the office. I didn't go into, I didn't find her or anything. I just went up and I came down. And in that 5 meters of elevation, I forgave her. And I decided that, hey, I'm not going to be the person that, say bad thing about people, even though she's done bad things or said bad things to me. If I say the same thing back to her, it doesn't make me a better person. So, and mind you, I was 12 when I thought of this. So afterwards, I came down, I just went out and ate a buffet, right? And I left that day, happy. I went back to find my mother and we celebrated.
So
and
beautiful.
Instead of turning it to something that could potentially ruin my day, right?
Yeah.
Could potentially spark an argument. I just decided that, hey, I'm bigger than that, And
So beautiful.
I did something that I enjoyed, which is what was to eat a buffet. And that to me it's like the best decision I've done. Yeah.
My goodness, that's profound, bro. That's profound, man. It's like 15 seconds of forgiveness, 15 seconds of ascension to a better version of yourself. 15 seconds to let all the anger in you melt away. Right, when you're forgiving her, right, what actually you're doing is you're actually setting yourself free. I always say to people is like when you're motivated by proving people wrong, you're actually burning unclean fuel. Right. So for example, those cars, even those pickup trucks on the road, they sometimes do emit like exhaust fumes that are so black, thick smoke. Right. It's like they are burning unclean fuel, unclean diesel. Right. But when you're burning clean fuel, right, it's like the wake you leave behind, the aftertaste you leave behind. It's actually the footprint you leave behind, the kind of emotional footprint you leave behind is a beautiful one.
Yeah, and I think talking about forgiveness is such a such a beautiful topic to talk about.
Yes.
And for the longest time, I've been wondering about, how do we truly forgive someone, and when do we know we have already truly forgiven someone? And this is something that I read from a book. I forgot which book was it, but it was beautiful. So it goes like this. The ultimate forgiveness is when you realize you have nothing to forgive. And let me unpack this a little bit. So the ultimate forgiveness is you have achieved it when you realize you don't need to be in front of that person and ask for forgiveness. You don't need to forgive that person, right? You don't need to be in front of him and say, hey, you've done bad things to me. You have to apologize. So ultimate and true forgiveness comes when it just dissolves. You just let go, you become the bigger person, right? And that to me, for the longest time, I was having a hard time understanding this. But when I related to my own experience, when I went out and forgave that teacher, that was true forgiveness. I didn't have, a checklist to tell myself that I've already forgiven her, right? I don't have to constantly remind that, this teacher has done bad things in my life. I have to forgive her, right? It just dissolves, right? That is when I realized that I've truly forgiven that person. When I realized I don't have to consciously think about forgiving this person, right? So that's something this I think is very beautiful.
So beautiful, and that's really is the essence of healing, right? It's like so unseen but so powerful. Like for example, now that you are doing what you're doing, you're inspiring people with Young Leaders Collective, but you're not doing it with an energy of wanting to prove the world wrong. It's kind of like, whoa, those years ago, right? You doubted me, you actually put me down. No, today I'm going to show you what a real educator is like. But you're not burning unclean fuel, you know what I mean? So you're burning loving fuel. You're kind of doing what you're doing out of a place of love in your heart. Of a wholehearted space of love.
Exactly.
Not a space of hatred, anger, pride, ego. That's so beautiful. That's why I think also at that moment in time you also feel like there's nothing left to prove.
There's nothing left to prove.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. So beautiful. And then let's talk a little bit about the Young Leaders Collective that you talked about, right? So what motivated you to start the Young Leaders Collective?
So I think, I've been asked this question so many times, but the answer is always the same. I wanted to build something that I really wanted, when I was a teenager. I hoped that, that thing was ready for me when I was a teenager, but it wasn't, right? And I think that is the main motivation behind starting Young Leaders Collective. I started 3 years ago when I was in the army, right? Very unconventional because people don't usually think about life outside of army when they're in the army. But at that point of time, I was just thinking, I remember I was in the shell scrape, I was doing my 5 days outfield, It was raining, my shell scrape was muddy, it was kind of depressing. I laid there in my muddy shell scrape. I thought to myself, Kelvin, what's next? Right? And it has always occurred to me that, I wanted to teach, I wanted to do something about young people, but I've just been postponing it. I've always been trying to wait for the perfect time. And at that moment, I just thought to myself, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Right? So with that thought, that same weekend when I booked out, I started Young Leaders Collective. Right? I didn't want to wait further, and I didn't want to wait for another person to do it. If I can do it, why not? So 3 years ago, I started that, and now it's been my 3rd year running it. So for the first 2 years, we're pretty much in Singapore. Our operations are all local. We run workshops, we run seminars, talks for students, bring them around different places to gain some clarity in life. Because a lot of people, when they're young, they're very lost. And the reason is because, it's not because they don't know what to do. It's simply because they haven't seen enough. Their options are limited, right? So, and in 2025, I have the privilege of, expanding Young Leaders Collective regionally. So now we have members from 10 different countries.
Wow.
And this is our 2nd week of launching our online community with about 300 students worldwide. And we just launched our first webinar series. Me and my brother shared our story yesterday. So that is the work that we're doing to provide, to be a beacon of hope and clarity for young people. To tell them that, hey, even when you're young, you can take charge of your life. That you don't have to live in the shadows of others. You can live a life that you're proud of. You can live a life filled with passion and meaning, right? And for us, by being present, by being here, by giving our whole heart into this, right, it inspires other people to maybe, just maybe, to explore the same, right? So that's Young Leaders Collective.
Wow, so beautiful, so beautiful. I think I like what you just said, right? It's like, sometimes people don't know what they want, also because they don't know what's possible. They haven't been shown, they haven't seen it yet, right? I think seeing is so powerful. Seeing is what we call sapere vedere. It means knowing how to see, right? When you see something, right, you cannot unsee it. When you experience something, you cannot unexperience it, right? So when you see something bigger, more powerful, more possible, you start to live with a sense of awe. No, you're awestruck. You have a sense of wonder. You kind of go, wow. And then this sense of potential, right, is very, very inspiring. It's very, very, galvanizing. It just invigorates you. It just makes you feel like, damn, it's like, what's possible? And then once you give people that options, right, then people become animated by that, right? Then people start to be willing to explore like you were, right? Talking about exploring, I also know that you explore a lot of different things, right? Tell me about what are some things you explored.
So back to the question, right? I don't know what to do with my life. So when I say that, to combat this, I guess, feeling, you really just have to try everything.
What are some things you have tried
And
before?
when I say everything, I tried so many different things. Like when I could be like fixing bed frames for elderly. Then when I was doing COVID, I was helping out with injections. There was one point in my life I was helping out. I was videoing marketing videos for hawker centers. And there was one time I even changed the road and put up a convex mirror. So many things I've done in my life. And the thing is, I'm just very curious. I am always very eager to learn about the world around me. I am not satisfied with knowing that it exists. I want to know why it exists. I don't know why it's done like that, right? So with this exploration, I picked up a thing or two, like things that I was really, really interested in. And that's why I like to call myself a product of collective wisdom, right? Through the experiences and people that I meet, I pick up things that I enjoy, that I feel like it's worthy to be a part of me. So eventually, after piecing all of these things together, I'm Kelvin, I form me. And so that to me, it's the best thing that I've done for myself is have the courage to explore, right? To really just go out there, get your hands dirty, like really dirty, and then afterwards things will fall together.
So beautiful, so beautiful. So you started doing a lot of different things, right? I mean, there's so much wisdom in what you just said. I mean, you just say like, it's like you're just like drinking water, but what you just say is so deep and so, profound. Just go out there and explore, just go and get your hands dirty, right? It's like it almost feels like you're the chosen one. It's like you're actually the world is a mirror to you. So when you often say that, it's like the world's wisdom is mirrored through you. So very often when you say you want to be a teacher, you want to be an educator and everything like that. I think one of the most important things for educators, teachers, right, is to be travelers. Not just traveling overseas for holiday, but more like travelers of life. Go on an odyssey of your mind. Open your mind to different things. Explore yourself. Explore things. Right. Expand yourself. Expand your horizons. And then you see different things. Right. You have different wisdom. Then you are able to remix. It's almost like a DJ remixing music. You have all of that stuff inside a repertoire. They can remix as wisdom to share with people. Right. There becomes insights that you truly uniquely bring to the table. Right. And people see themselves mirrored to you through you. Right, it's like you are a mirror. You are a messenger. You are an explorer come messenger. You are going out there explore everything, and then you are bringing that wisdom back and distilling it down to the people in front of you, the people you have an opportunity to inspire.
Exactly. I really like the analogy of mirror. I think life is a mirror at its own, right? And the energy that we give out, what we do to the world, eventually reflects back onto us.
Yes.
So I really believe in doing good. So long as you do things right, the right things will come. So I think that is something that I've been doing my whole life, and I really encourage other people to do the same. Don't expect immediate results. Don't expect things that will benefit you like instantly. Sometimes you just gotta give without thinking, and sometimes the world will give without thinking as well.
Yep.
So that to me is something that I think everyone's worth learning from.
Talking about mirrors, right? There was this particular incident, right? So tell me a little bit more about that. Right? Yeah.
The convex mirror?
Yeah. Tell me more about that story.
So I think that's one of the most interesting stories I gotta share. So when I was JC 17, right? Because I like the gym. So there was one night when I'm traveling back to home from the gym, and there's this notorious angle. This sidewalk where accidents always happen because it was a dead angle. No one can see from their own perspective, right? So when I was traveling back home, I witnessed an accident. There was an elderly and a middle-aged Chinese man on his PMD. They crashed, right? It was a pretty brutal crash. So like the elderly, he fell, his eggs, vegetables all scattered on the floor and everything. And then I went there and helped him up, right? And then afterwards I sent him back home. But afterwards I stood at a very, very exact place where the accident happened. And I thought to myself, you mean for the past 20 years, no one has bothered to do anything about it, right? every day I see accident here. Even sometimes I'm a victim of it, but no one has done anything about it. So I decided that day, the accident will stop with me. So it's a very funny thing to do. I think no one would expect me to do it, but I wrote an email to Mr. Taman, who is like the president of Singapore now, and I told him that, hey, I think we should put up a convex mirror here, right? There's been accidents happening on a daily basis. Why not we just put something here? And I just sent it for fun. I didn't expect a reply back. But the very next day, he sent me an email and said, hey, Kelvin, thanks for raising this up. Can I link you up with LTA and you guys take it away? So that's what he did. And the next day, the mirror was up. So it has been 1,400 days since the last accident happened, and it only took 5 minutes of my time to send that email. So why do I like to share this story? Because it taught me a very, very important lesson that even as an individual, you have the power, you have the capacity to change the world around you. And sometimes when we don't have, it would be foolish to think that we have all the resources in the world, to change the entire world. But sometimes we don't have to do that. If we can change the world for one person, that is a job well done. You just need to continue finding the next person, and before you know it, this ripple effect will reach a lot of people. So with one convex mirror, no more accidents happen, for the past 4 years. And that to me, this ideology, I carry it with me in everything I do. Right? With Young Leaders Collective, one more student, I just need one more school. I don't think about changing the world the whole time, right? I think about going to the school, giving that 2-hour workshop, and afterwards I'll find the next school and do it again. So that to me, it's the greatest lesson I learned from that convex mirror.
So powerful. I think you were talking a lot about the convex mirror, but I would like to bring the attention to something else. Like you wrote an email to Taman, who's today the president of Singapore. In those days, right, he wasn't the president of Singapore yet. He was the MP,
correct,
the Minister of Parliament of Jurong GRC, where you're living. So, but you were 17 years old. What gave you that courage to write to the minister, with a suggestion?
At that point of time, I just thought I needed to reach out to someone who can make decision. I don't want to, it's. I think someone may think that it's a bit inappropriate to skip like the chain of command, right? To go up to the highest level of authority straight. But to me, I was just thinking, at that point of time, I was just thinking, Kelvin, who is that one person that can solve your problem like by tomorrow? So that person came to mind. Hey, he's the guy who runs this place. It is his job, his responsibility to take care of the well-being of the people here. So I just wrote an email directly to him saying, hey, can you help me with this? And I think Mr. Taman is a very wholehearted leader as well, right?
Yes.
That's why he's loved by the people. And that's why he got back to me so quickly. And the next thing I know, everything's up. So, I mean, he's a perfect example of a wholehearted leader as well.
Fantastic. I hope that one day I'll be able to get it on my podcast, right? But coming back to you, right? People say that, how dare you skip the chain of command and everything like that. But he was speaking from a space of status. Like you are a 17-year-old, he's the minister, his status is there, so high up there, and your status is so low down there, and how dare you skip the chain of status. But you were driven not by status, you were driven by service. You were driven by what can I do that will make the best maximum impact on the people around me the fastest possible way. And that really shows the spirit of service that you have. And that's what you bring to the table as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Ooh, so much to unpack over here. And then you talk about you talk about just exploring different things. There was this other time you wrote to a dentist.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about it.
That was also when I was 17. So at that point of time, right, the school before the year started, they wanted the students to go out and do something. So a lot of them went out to do like volunteering. You can also go out to go like bowling or whatever, doesn't matter. The school just pretty much gave you free time. And at that point, the time, right, I was thinking myself, I wanted to learn about something that I've never learned before. And it just came to my mind that I wanted to experience a day in the life of a dentist. So I wrote into a dentist on Q&M and I said, hey, can I come down to take a look of what you do on a daily basis? It was just for fun, I just sent that one email out. But, the next day he got back to me, said, hey, okay, Kelvin, like, sure. Right, so I went down with a few friends and I went there and he showed me around, his place, his clinic, his equipment, his day-to-day. And it was very interesting because, I got to know how a dentist function and what's their work like on a day-to-day. But, when everything is done, after all the interview, after I got satisfied, with the answers, we sat down and we had a heart-to-heart talk, right, with the dentist, because he has no like customers coming in at that point of time. And I asked him, this question: are you happy with what you're doing? Right? And he took a very long pause and he said, not really. Then I asked him why, to majority of us, to society, you've achieved everything. You are the perfect example of a good son in an Asian household. You became a dentist, right? But he kept silent, and afterwards he pointed to his desk, and I turned my head around and I saw there's a bunch of Hot Wheels on his table, right? And afterwards he shared with me that his dream was to be a car mechanic. He always wanted to be a car mechanic, but because of different reasons like societal expectations, he became a dentist in the end. So his parting words to me was, be a dentist if you want to be a dentist, not because your parents want you to be a dentist.
Wow.
I would love to be a car mechanic. And that to me, is something, it's really unexpected, because I never imagined myself to learn, this lesson from this very impromptu trip. But that also means that how many of us, there's so many people out there that are living unfulfilled dreams, right? That initial relationship that he had with the car, those toys that he loved, because of societal expectations, they were drowned over the years. And that to him, it makes him very unhappy, right? Even though he may have the things that, he has now, a nice car, good career. But when he goes back home, I think when he sleeps, sometimes you just think about, what if? What if I pursued it? What if I was courageous enough? He may be as equivalent, as successful as a dentist by running a chain of, car mechanic shops, right? But, he didn't, pursue it. So that to me is something that I learned, and that I told myself, hey, if I had a dream, I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to try. Even if I fail, now this failure is not going to give me a lot of sorrow. It's going to give me stories, right? So that was the experience that I had in that clinic. Yeah.
So wonderful, so much to unpack. Number one is like, a lot of people say, hey, I want my parents want me to be a dentist or whatever, everything. Then they just thought, okay, that's my life path. But seriously, if you do not know whether you want to be a dentist or not, write into a dentist and say, hey, can I come and sit with you for a day? Hey, can I come and shadow you for a day? Hey, can I come and be your assistant for a day? And then after being an assistant to a dentist, you kind of look at the day-to-day life of dentist, and you need to ask yourself whether that's what you sign up for. Right, in HR circles, in the more professional HR circles, this is called realistic job preview. Realistic job preview means to say that even before you decide to go into that career, right, you already had a preview. It's like before you decide to marry a woman, right, or you decide marry a man, what you do, you date the person, right? You go on dates, you go out, you even go on holidays together, just to understand each other's living habits, to know whether, hey, whether I can really live with this person or not, before you marry the person, right or not?
Definitely.
But how crazy it is that we don't date the future jobs before we just go into a job. And then I realized that, damn, I'm stuck in a dead-end job, or I'm paid a certain salary, but in a job I'm totally miserable about. And then it's like, I just can't find it in me to walk away, because like, if I am paid this wonderful salary, and I'm trained for this, and I just walk away, then what am I going to do next? Right or not? We are saying no to this big paycheck, and then we become locked into things that we are not happy about. They're so powerful, and just this dating analogy come back to me. And a second dating analogy is when you mention this word that really caught my ears: initial relationship. It's almost like your first love.
Your first love, yeah.
You never forget a lot. I mean, it sounds cliche, right? But many people never forget their first love, right? But what do you mean by initial relationship?
Initial relationship basically means like, out of the many things you have done, especially in your early years, there'll be one or two things that you feel like your heart is attracted to. Aww. Something that you're really, really passionate about, right? And I know you have a story to tell about this.
Yes, I do.
So I want to hear that story from you as well.
Well, I mean, okay, here's my story, right? Very quickly. I grew up. Okay, I'm much older than you, lah. So I grew up in Tampines for a year, living with my grandmother, my ama. And it was in Tampines by the PIE, across the road from where Simei is. That time Simei was being built. Okay, I'm that old. I was a very young little boy then, but they were building Simei. So from the balcony of my ama's place, right, my granny's place, right, I can actually see aeroplanes landing in Changi Airport. So every day I just stood there. Most kids will be like looking at other things, right? But I looking at aeroplanes transfixed. I'll be just like seeing aeroplanes land one after another. So I wanted to be a pilot. So when I was young, right, I always wanted to be a pilot, a commercial pilot. And my dreams were dealt a crushing blow when I was 8 years old, when I was diagnosed with color blindness. My color blindness is real. I even had a MOH letter saying I'm colorblind. So in chemistry lessons, right, I need a invigilator to sit next to me all the time during my entire experiment. Not because she's going to give me the answer, but because she's just going to tell me what is the color of the liquid and what's the color of the substance, because I can't see. So I might be doing the experiment correct, but because I can't see, I'll give the wrong answers, and therefore I'll get it wrong, you see. So the invigilator is there just to give me the answer. So that's the extent of my color blindness. That's why I cannot drive also. Yeah. So I cannot drive a car, let alone fly a plane. But I always wanted to be a pilot. So when I was young, I built model aeroplanes. My whole house was like an airport. My mother always tell my relatives when they come over, hey, you know, my house is like an airport. You know, it's like he parked his airplanes everywhere. You know, but of course when we move house, we have to throw away a lot of those bulky model aeroplanes that I painstakingly built. But I had a lot of fun doing that. Now as I'm older, I don't have the time to build them anymore. But I buy them. So I still buy model aeroplanes from a lot of places I go to. So my home still is like an airport. So whenever I travel on an aeroplane, right, normally when people go into an aeroplane, they just like sit down and then they just put on the earphones and start to sleep, right? They don't even watch the safety video. I will not be doing that. I'll be touching buttons in the in-flight entertainment system. I'll be checking out the aeroplane characteristics, the features of aeroplane. I'll be checking out, oh wow, how it looks like, how's the experience like, how is the seat, how big is the seat, how far is that? It's almost like I can do an aeroplane review video like Sam Chui, you know. It's like I'm just fascinated by that. So you know, when aeroplane was taxiing to take off, I'll be I always take the window seat. I'll keep my face glued outside the window and looking outside at what other airplanes pass by, other jets passing by. Because you know, when I travel to other countries, other cities, right, I will end up seeing planes I don't get to see normally in Singapore Changi Airport. So I'm just totally geek out over that, like a little boy in a toy store, and people will never understand that. Like, what are you doing all these things for? I was like, when my wife travel with me, I'll tell her, I'll just like little boy in a toy store, I say, hey, look at that, hey, check this out, and she's like, it is just in-flight entertainment. It is just a few buttons. Like, it's just this, it's just that. Like, no, it's not just this, it's that. And she's just like totally flummoxed by me. But I guess that's why I love traveling as well. I love flying on aeroplanes, and that's why when clients engage me for overseas speaking engagements, I always insist on booking my own air tickets so that I can try different flight routes and try different aeroplanes. And I often book the flight route, right, just for the particular airline and a particular aeroplane model that I want to take. So yeah, that's a little bit of my little geekiness.
And that is like exactly what is initial relationship, right? You
Yeah.
know, have this encounter with something when you're really young, that you're really, really passionate about it. And to me, it's so important that you keep this alive, right? So you don't have to be a pilot, but you can still geek out over aeroplanes. There's nothing wrong with it, right?
Yes.
And now, even though you're not in the aviation industry and not being a pilot, but you're still helping people take flight in terms of dreams, right?
Yes.
In terms of uncovering their stories. So it's just another way of helping people take flight. And I think this initial relationship is very important because I believe there's always something inside of everyone that makes them excited about things. So don't forget about them. Just like the dentist who's excited about Hot Wheels, right? He can be a dentist, but continue playing with Hot Wheels. Right?
Another interesting snippet story, right? It's like I'm part of a speakers association, and there's a mentee of mine. She is a financial controller of an MNC. So she's a high-level person in finance in the MNC. And she came to me because she also wants to explore speaking as a career, right? So as I was helping her to unpack her story, her backstory, and unpacking her unique positioning, I do not know why. She's a very serious person, as you can imagine, financial controller, right? But something in me just thought to ask her these questions. What do you want to be when you're younger? And she said, I want to be a detective. I would love reading detective novels, watching detective shows. And I was like, interesting. And she was very fascinated by that answer as well. It's almost like I got her in touch with that initial relationship. And she spent a whole weekend journaling and thinking. And then she came up to me one day and she's excitedly telling me, Coen, that question you asked me is so powerful. It unlocked something in me. It just made me come alive again about something. Why don't I marry my expertise in finance with my love for detective to do forensic finance.
Wow.
And now she just recently got certified, right? To do, like, for example, like fraud detection, fraud control. So she's marrying her expertise in finance with her love for for being a detective.
Beautiful.
And she's so excited, though. She's animated, So whether she becomes a speaker or not full time, but it's almost like her career has been given a shot in the arm, like a second boost, because she went back to that initial relationship.
Beautiful.
It's a great story to share as well. I'm like, wonderful story to share.
It is.
So beautiful, so beautiful. Can I ask more questions? Like, there's another question I want to ask, right? It's like social pressure, right? Like for you, you explained, you shared that you are going to take a gap year from school. Have you ever wondered, like, what will your parents think? And what about the friends that you used to keep, right? It's like they may not be able to keep up with the same rate at which you're progressing. Then you may slowly but surely grow distance from them. How do you cope with that?
I think this is a topic that, for the longest time I try to avoid, because it's very difficult to talk about, like, lost relationships, lost friends, relationship with parents. But I think I do have a lot to share about this, because it's something that I've been working on very, very actively. So let's start with parents. And this is something that I like to advise all, like, young people. When you have a dream and you have something to pursue, right, you must first, you must prove yourself worthy. You can't be just, saying that I want to do this, I want to jump to it, and I expect the world around me to support me. It doesn't work that way. Because at the end of the day, most parents, they come from a position of love. They come from a position of, care. That's because that's all they know. To them, stability is success. That's how they raise the family to where it is today. So they naturally want you to do the same thing. But if you're able to prove them that, hey, this path that I chose myself, it's not a rash decision. It's something that has been well thought out. It's something that can be turned to a career. And slowly you start to change their mind, because that is my own journey, right? 3 years ago, when I told my parents I wanted to focus on youth development work, they look at me and think I'm crazy. My father's a software engineer, right? So my whole life I've been prepared to go into the engineering sector, right? I've been exposed to tech at a young age and everything. But that wasn't my passion. It wasn't my dream, right? And a lot of times, parents will impose their dreams on their children. So that, to me, it's something that I think parents have to consider when it comes to, like, helping your child navigate what he wants to do. So that, to me, it's very important. But afterwards, when I proved myself, right, and my father has been, like, wondering, how on earth my son getting invited to all these events? Like, he's speaking in front of government people, like, he's being sent to the United States, he's invited to the White House, right? Then my father say, 儿子, you want to do what? You just go ahead. You need support, you let daddy know. So over the years, I've learned to, prove myself worthy. And that, to me, is very important, because you can't expect everyone to support you when you don't have track record, when you don't know what you're doing. Right? So I believe when you are really going into that particular mission, when you're ready, naturally you find people who support you. Yeah. So that, to me, is the parents' part. But for the friends' part, it's very different. Because, even as 21, I've changed many groups of friends already. Because at this age of my life, when I'm progressing, like, exponentially, sometimes it's just very hard to relate, or very hard to keep certain group of friends, right? But I think the thing that I want to say is, it's okay for your circle to evolve, right? Your circle will evolve as you do, right? It will change. It's a dynamic relationship. It's not like something stagnant. But remember those people fondly. Remember them fondly. Like those people who have came in your life. Some of them are meant to stay. Some of them are just visitors for a short period of time. But remember all of them fondly, close to your heart, right? Because 10, 20 years later, these people are all memories, right? They've visited, some stayed, some left, but they're all part of your story, part of this beautiful life canvas that you had. Yeah. So even though if it's just a tiny dot, it contributes to the entire picture. So that, to me, it's about friends. Even though I've lost quite a fair bit of, not say lost, but lost touch with quite a fair bit of them, but I still remember fondly. I wish them well, and I check up on them from time to time. But know that it's okay for your circle to evolve as you do.
Wow, I'm getting emotional, man, listening to that. That's so beautiful. Remembering them fondly. maybe I have still something on the heel. Maybe I have a bit of like anxious attachment issue, and so I always don't like to lose friends, and that also is a topic that's very very close to me. But sometimes you just grow, apart. Just grow because the rate at which you are growing is very different. You just kind of grow apart slowly. It just makes me touched. Like, it just makes me also very emotional thinking about that as well. But very beautifully said. It's like they are part of the canvas of your life. Wow, that's so beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for
absolutely. And sometimes I also still wonder, how are they doing? What are they doing now? And if, how would it turn out if we are still, close together and things like that. But, I think the perspective comes when I change from what if to even if, right? So every time I think of what if we still connected, what if we are still friends, what if we are still close and things like that. But no, I just think about even if. So even if we're distant, we had a great time and remember each other fondly. Even if, we have already crossed our path, eventually, maybe, just maybe, we'll find ourselves together again. So that to me, and it's also I've also put in like conscious effort to catch up with the people I really want to. So even those people that have, I've lost touch with for a while, even for years I've not met them. Sometimes, when you're at this stage of life, like, hey, I want to meet them, right? And then sometimes just drop them a text. Don't have to meet them in person, but, just see how they're doing. So yeah, it's a lot of learning to be done lah. I'm still figuring things out. But that to me, it's acknowledging that everyone has, a part to play in your life. It's very profound, very beautiful.
So beautiful, so beautiful. So much unpack, right? One more thing that you shared before that I found besides very very profound is this idea of like thinking like someone, right? You're saying recently that you're talking to somebody who said to you, hey, I want to be a doctor, but I don't know how. And then you say like, start thinking like a doctor, right? It's like, you want to be a doctor, start thinking like a doctor. If you want to be a detective, start thinking like a detective. Tell me more about what you mean by that.
I think it's pretty straightforward. So if you want to be someone, you have to first think like that person, right? So I always wanted to be like an entrepreneur. At 16, I started my first business. But I think at that point of time, I didn't know how to be a good entrepreneur. I was still like thinking like myself, like a student, right? So the big breakthrough came when I think like an entrepreneur. I think like, what would a successful entrepreneur do, right? And let's say like the example where I talked about the doctor, right? The student wants to be a doctor, but he is spending like 8 to 10 hours every day on his phone. He is like, just floating around, doing all the stuff. Will a doctor do that? Probably not really, right? To become a doctor, there's quite a lot of things you need to do. You understand the industry, you need to get some experience in the industry, you need to talk to more doctors, right? So naturally, if you think like the person you want to be, and you act like the person you want to be, you will be the person you want to be, right? That is how all of them get to where they are today, right? And that's why it's very important to not just think like them, but to surround yourself with people like that. Ask good questions, right? Because they've already walked through that path that you are trying to navigate. You save 30 years of your life just by asking good questions. So that's what I told him to do, And yeah, he's been doing that, and it's been amazing. And now he's actually studying medicine.
Oh wow, what a great story. Kelvin, so much gems and wisdom, pearls of wisdom are just coming out of your mouth, right? It's like even words like, instead of thinking of what if, think of even if. I'm like, wow, I know I need to write that down, right? You have a gift of words, you have a way of words, but I think it's beyond just words, right? I think what you really are is you are a person of deep wisdom, right? You are able to internalize all of these experiences that you have, and all these things that you read in the books, things that you learn on videos, and you're able to apply them in your own life, implement them, and you become them, right? Like you said, right? Think like them, then you act like them, then you become them, right? It's kind of like becoming, right? Instead of just like, am I or am I not? Sometimes we ask ourselves the wrong questions, right? It's like, am I or am I not? It's not about am I or am I not. It's like you kind of like think like it, act like it, and you become like it. When you become like it, your identity just shift. And like a rubber band that is pulled beyond its normal resistance level, it will never go back to its ordinary original shape, right? It's like so powerful. Like it's like so much wisdom in what you shared. And even coming back to something that you shared earlier in the podcast, right? It's not just I can't remember exactly what you said, but you said something like it's not just like you pretend to be like it, right? Like you are it. You are authentically it. So that's what Adam Grant shared between surface acting and deep acting, A lot of us are walking around wearing masks, faking it, trying to make things work. Okay, that's fair enough. Acknowledge that you're trying to figure things out. You don't need to have all the answers, but at least you walk around trying to figure things out. But you slowly but surely every day become stronger and better in every possible way, right? Then eventually you become it. You kind of like step into that moment when you realize that, hey, when you're on that stage that day when you put up your hands and volunteered, right? It's a lot of work that goes into that moment. It's not just that moment of 2 minutes brilliance of speech, right? And when you said that they stood up and celebrated you, but very often people forget. When people give you an ovation, when people celebrate you, what they're actually celebrating is themselves. They are celebrating the possibility of themselves. When they see in you, you show it to them what is possible in them. So while they see in you, it mirrors back in their own hearts that, hey, that's possible.
Oh, I just got goosebumps. Wow. Beautiful.
Yeah, and I mean, I also got goosebumps talking to you because, like, Kelvin, your words just resonate very deeply with me. It's just like, whew, it's deeply imprinted in me. It's like I always get so hyped up talking to you. So I get so inspired talking to you. It's almost like I had a deep one-to-one conversation with like Tony Robbins himself. You know what I mean? Yeah, just talking to you, listening to you, and imbibing your wisdom. Right, it's just so uplifting and empowering.
Thank you. Me too.
It's like all good things will come to an end. I hate this, but I need to, kind of like come to the end of this podcast. And typically when we come to the end of a podcast, we ask our guests a few common questions to wrap up. It's a quick fire round. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Right. So first question, what's the most powerful question you have ever been asked before?
Why? That's the most powerful question. Why? Why do I do what I do? Right? Because that unlocks a lot of things to say, right? It challenges me as a person. Like, why do I do all of this? Right? And I think that is something that sometimes I still think about why I do what I do. And sometimes I realize it's okay for your answer to change. And that to me is really about life. It's dynamic. It's an ever changing lifestyle, right? At this moment, I may be very, very passionate about Young Leaders Collective. But 10, 20 years down the road, I never know what's going to happen. So it's very important to keep asking yourself why and surround yourself with people who always challenge you. Like, why are you doing what you're doing now, right? To make sure you're on the right track. So I love that question.
Beautiful, beautiful. Who is a mentor or supporter? I know you have many, but choose one. Who has made the biggest difference in your life?
My elder brother, Jensen. Like, he is someone who changed my life a lot. Like, he's someone that I deeply admire. We are just 1 year apart. Even though in terms of like professionally, I've done a lot more things than him. But when it comes to like personally, when it comes to like the inner work, he is leaps and bounds ahead of me. He is the person who inspired me. To me is a good man, right? And he's someone that I look up to and someone that, I always tell myself growing up, I will never be less of a man than my brother. So that to me, my brother is someone amazing. We've been through all the journey together. The stories that I've shared, there's always one person that's beside me, and that's my elder brother. And as I was figuring all of this out, I have someone to ask this question to. It was my elder brother. But my elder brother, he had no one to ask. He had to figure all these things out himself. And that to me, he's the greatest teacher I've had in my life. And I always love him for it. And, that is my brother Jensen to me.
Wow. So beautiful. What's the most courageous thing you have done in your life that has made the biggest difference?
I think the most courageous thing that I've done is to be me, right? Is to be who I am as a person authentically, to answer my dreams, to answer my calling, to go against the tide. Sometimes it's meant to be uncomfortable, right? But many years down the road, as I talk to students, as I stand in front of schools, as I see the spark in their eyes, I see the flames in their heart, I know I've answered the right calling. And that, the words like full circle. Sometimes, the things I've done, people I've talked to, and from their response, from their stories, just like the trip that I went to Laos, when a country where talking about dreams is not the norm, and when I'm done speaking, the entire school gets up and tell me my dreams, tell me their dreams. That is when I know that, I've done a right job, and I'll continue doing it.
Where can our listeners or our viewers on YouTube find out more information about you?
Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. I share a lot of stories there. And I think you can join inside my LinkedIn, there is a bio, there's a link there where you can join my WhatsApp group. So that's where we host like monthly webinars featuring really, really inspiring people from all over the world. So if you think you are someone who is able to inspire the youth and also someone who has a great story to tell, feel free to reach out to me as well. We'll get your stories out to the students from all over the world, right? So I think that is the place that you can find more information about me. Yes.
Fantastic. We'll put more of links to Kelvin's profile and bio on LinkedIn in the show notes below. And once again, thank you very much, Kelvin, for coming on the Wholehearted Leadership Podcast. You have given so much value to all of us. I believe that everyone would have benefited tremendously from your sharing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Coen. This is a privilege to be here, and I look forward to spending more time with you and hearing more stories with you. And I think to end off everything, I think to be a wholehearted leader, you have to have a heart full of love. Just like Coen, just like me, just like every other people. So take care everyone, and hope to see you all in person soon, one day or another. Bye bye.
You stole my line. I usually don't want to say bye bye, but yeah, bye bye.